Your Excellencies, Members of Parliament, fellow laureates and friends. Thank you for this honour. It's one thing to be recognised by juries of journalists giving prizes for journalism. It's quite nice to win those too, but this award is on a different plane. Over the years, the Right Livelihood Award has gone to extraordinary men and women who have done remarkable things, as it says, for the planet and its people. Scientists, environmentalists, doctors, economists, lawyers, faith leaders, and engineers amongst them. So some people may raise an eyebrow at the thought of journalists keeping such company. If so, that's largely our fault, because of course journalists do many things that aren't terribly admirable. We can and we do get things wrong. We can be shallow, vindictive, trivializing, fickle, and heartless. Some journalists abuse their power, break the law, and enjoy the view from the bully pulpit. That's journalism at its worst. But journalism at its best is, I think, not only of benefit to humanity, but essential to it. If you doubt that, look around at societies where journalists are not free to do their work. Societies where those with power don't have to worry about anyone examining how they use that power. Where there are no independent voices or organizations able honestly to report, scrutinize, evaluate, and criticize. We know what those societies look like. And then consider this. How many people you know are prepared to die for their job? The Committee for the Protection of Journalists in New York keeps the figures. 42 journalists dead this year. Some 1,600 since the CPJ started logging the statistics in 1992. Every day of every year, colleagues around the world risk their lives because they know the world needs journalism. They feel a drive, a mission, a duty to bear witness. There's no doubt they think of journalism as a public service, almost as a kind of calling. I'm here today because of one family and one individual, both of whom knew this truth about journalism at its best. The family is the Scott family. The Manchester Guardian was founded in 1821 in response to a massacre of innocent people by the state, the so-called Peterloo Massacre of 1819. The founding editor, who was there on the spot and who reported on the killings, started The Guardian because he knew how important it was that there was a widely circulated, truthful account of what happened. The Scott family did a remarkable thing with the Manchester Guardian, as it then was in 1936. They gave the paper away. They didn't float it, cash out, or go in search of an oligarch or a hedge fund. They put the Guardian into a trust, making not a penny from it. The only purpose of the trust is to preserve it, with its liberal traditions, its beliefs that a newspaper is not simply a business, but a form of public service, and to preserve the Guardian in perpetuity. So as editor of The Guardian, I'm conscious every day of the debt that I owe to the Scott family and to its remarkable editor for 57 years, C.P. Scott, who wrote on the paper's centenary that he would never have wanted to be involved with a paper if it had put profit above its ability to, as he described it, play on the minds and consciences of men. And there have been one or two people since I've been in Stockholm who have come up to me and asked about whether the Scott Trust isn't a model for ownership in other parts of the world, and I think the answer is yes. The second person I want to acknowledge, and you've just heard from him, is my fellow award winner, Edward Snowden. And it's lovely to have his father, Lon, here today. I should say his proud father. Snowden saw things that he found profoundly troubling while working as a young analyst at the NSA. And I think even people who disapprove of his behavior generally concede that he has provoked and helped inform a long overdue debate about the extent, the legality, and the ethics of forms of mass surveillance that were barely imaginable even 20 years ago. Now, Edward Snowden could easily have published the material himself. In 2014, anyone could be a publisher. There was nothing to stop him editing and disseminating the documents himself. But he chose instead to go to journalists, the journalists he trusted, and he asked them responsibly to publish the material they found most significant. He believed in journalism. He did this in the certain knowledge that this act would have severe consequences for his own life, as well as his friends and his family. And in the certain knowledge that the people, institutions, and governments he was forcing into daylight would fight back, demand darkness once more, and extract a price. And one of the challenges that Snowden poses for us is the recognition that there is no such thing as the public interest, no such thing as one monolithic interest that overrides all others. Living our lives securely without being murdered by terrorists, that's certainly a very important public interest, and one we may feel acutely at the moment. Freedom of expression, enshrined in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution and in the European Convention, is another. Privacy is held sacred by millions of us and is written in the US Fourth Amendment and Article 8 of the European Convention. Since the Magna Carta in Britain, we've resisted the power of the state to exercise arbitrary powers over our lives, to enter our houses or seize our papers. But what if seizing the modern equivalent of every single individual's private papers might save a life? States and businesses love encryption if it helps evade the glare of tyrants or keep state or financial secrets safe from hackers. But states and law enforcement agencies also hate encryption for other reasons and will do their best to undermine it. So there are many, often conflicting public interests, not one. And this fact was forgotten in the white heat of Snowden by some journalists who said, if the state says it's not in the public interest to publish something, who am I to contradict them? There's an easy answer to that. You're a journalist. You're not part of the state or the government. Your job is responsible disclosure, not secrecy. You stand aside from power in order to scrutinize it. Your job is to be fully sensitive to all those public interests and to publish what you judge to be significant as carefully as you know. Only then is informed debate possible. And you have as much right to balance those public interests as a politician or a policeman or a judge. And when they come for you and they tell you to stop, and then they tell you they will force you to stop, and then they come into your office and oversee the destruction of your computers, your job is to carry on publishing, to carry on making those fine judgments in the full awareness of conflicting public interests. You do it not because you hate your country, but because you love your country. Because at school they made you read John Milton and George Orwell. Because at university you studied John Stuart Mill. Because as a British journalist you unearthed your own heroes who had gone before, including John Wilkes, William Cobbett, C.P. Scott, Emily Hobhouse, or Harold Evans. All of them at times derided, denounced, pursued, sued, jailed, or exiled. They made us smash up our hard disks, but we didn't stop publishing. To some, the image of that ground-out, gouged-out Guardian computer circuit board was a sinister one. The mayor of Leipzig, when he visited my office, found it a chilling one for reasons that are still within the living memory of millions of Germans. But just as there's no single public interest, there can be no single view of what happened during the Snowden affair. Over time, I began to find that image of the destroyed computers both a chilling symbol of optimism a chilling, both a chilling symbol, but also a symbol of optimism, precisely because we were able to continue publishing. The smashed-up computer was a symbol of impotence as well as power. The internet is the thing they fear, the thing they want to master, the space in which we all find darkness as well as light. But the very reasons that the state wants to tame, penetrate, and control the digital universe are the same reasons which make it an instrument of liberty. What was unpublishable in Britain was publishable elsewhere. Infuriating to the British state, no doubt, but I guess we would all agree wonderful if the information in question was trying to escape the control of China or Turkey or Russia or Syria. So Snowden opened our eyes to multiple, sometimes competing and clashing public interests, including those represented by corporations, civil libertarians, intelligence agencies, lawyers, politicians, and journalists. How well governments have responded to the challenges Edward Snowden has sent us is for another occasion. But it's certain if politicians have no appetite to address the issues raised by Snowden, they forfeit the right to criticize the press for doing the thing they shied away from. As for me, I feel incredibly privileged as a journalist. Privileged because when the attack came on The Guardian had the institutional strength and resilience to withstand it and defend its journalism. That's what a great newspaper is or should be. And I was privileged because I was so immensely proud of my colleagues, and two of them are here today who were very involved in it. Ewan McCaskill, who reported with Edward Snowden from Hong Kong, and Paul Johnson, the deputy editor of The Guardian. I've always thought of reporters like bees. They're essential to the sustainability of any ecosystem of information about ourselves. And during the year of working on the Snowden documents, my enormous respect for our journalists and lawyers grew even more. The reporters and editors who so skillfully found what it was that had troubled our source, the lawyers who defended its publication. And I was strengthened immeasurably in my conviction that journalism can indeed perform a public service, and that journalism must always, always stand profoundly independent of all forms of power. And I felt so privileged because the editor of The Guardian is almost uniquely privileged. 193 years ago, as I said, a Manchester citizen witnessed an outrage by the state and founded a newspaper in response. Nearly 80 years ago, his family established this trust to protect that paper. And when push came to shove, when there came another moment to shine a light on the immense and sometimes troubling powers of the state, that trust, in turn, protected the editor and the journalism. There was nobody to topple. So thank you for this award. There's a new word in this age of Twitter and Facebook, the humble brag, which is appearing to be modest while simultaneously boasting of your success. I feel the ultimate humble brag today, genuinely modest to be receiving this award alongside such distinguished laureates today, Edward, Asma, Bill, and Basil, and humble to be the recipient of this rather remarkable reward, which has gone to so many extraordinary people. But what a lovely thing to brag about.